Hey, what's up guys, Crazy here, back into Borderlands 3 with an updated guide for Amara level 57 Tediore build, which is absolutely crazy, one of the best builds in the game, pretty much been so since day one, and now it's even more powerful thanks to the surplus of skill points that we have at hand, as well as to a bunch of other buffs that the game has gotten in the past few months. So quite a lot of stuff to talk about. Let's jump right into it, and as always, a thumbs up on this video would be super awesome. But let's begin with some of the items that you're going to absolutely need. So the most important ones over here are obviously going to be the shotguns. In this case, we're mainly using the Everblast ++ Epic Tediore shotgun, mainly with the shock elemental, since this coupled with the transformer is what is going to keep you alive. You're going to be throwing these onto the enemies, onto the ground at their feet. It's going to explode, dealing electric damage, which in the process destroys the enemy and keeps you alive. So pretty much a win-win situation. Now if you happen to fight against enemies that happen to be resistant to shock damage, you can pick something with a different elemental, like corrosive against a ton of armor enemies in the Moxie's DLC, or for example something like this one right here that has quite a bit of radiation damage, which pretty much goes against anything in the game that you throw it at. The only problem with these other elementals is that you won't be able to throw these at your feet because you're gonna risk downing yourself, so you're only immune to shock damage. With the transformer, pretty much anything else is going to kill you, and in this case even radiation or corrosive still deals over 500,000 damage, which is way higher than whatever HP or shields you may have, so just be careful with that. Anyway, if you're worrying about getting any of these items, there's a couple of options that you have. For the Everblast ++, you can either go in and farm this. For example, you can use the Fabricator to just spawn a ton of weapons, including epics, and there's a high chance for one of these to be in there. You can also go farm these in pretty much any other location that drops a ton of loot, like the Metal One Takedown, or you can follow the links in the description down below. That's gonna give you a download link for the save file that's gonna work both on the Epic Games Store version of it as well as Steam. Now the second one that we're gonna be using is the Face Puncher, and this isn't going to be a damage source. Mainly we're gonna use the melee side of this, so when you're shooting with this, it kind of counts as melee attacks, which goes very well with the Cutpurse Deathless, and especially so with the effect at the bottom. Dealing melee damage replenishes ammo, so this basically means that one single pellet from the Face Puncher is enough to fully replenish your shotgun ammo. Nonetheless, as far as the other items go, we are obviously going to be using the Spiritual Driver, and this is gonna give us both gun damage as well as a ton of speed. So actually, as we speed up, we gain all of that gun damage, which is very useful at taking down the enemies, and you're gonna be running left and right and just throwing these Everblasts, and all of this is gonna synergize very well together. And as far as the grenade goes, it's a Piss Grenade, very useful to debuff enemies, and this one also gives 25% increased damage. Don't go with something that gives you more elemental damage, because this coupled with the Spiritual Driver is a no-go, especially after you use it once. So this is the general build, and the only other item that you can switch in is probably the Cutsman. This is a very good combination. I think that you can also kind of go in a bit with the Anarchy, though I don't really recommend it. Anarchy doesn't really deal splash damage. We're not using Anarchy for splash damage, mostly for, well, just the primary damage, so I don't suggest that with this build. But you can maybe use the Lob, since that does count on the explosion, or with other similar weapons that take benefit from splash damage, but this Tediore is by far the best out there. Now anyway, let's go over the actual build and everything you need to know about it. So as I was saying, the primary one is going to be the blue tree, but basically points are going to be invested in all of the trees, as a matter of fact. So let's get started with the Mystical Assault. First one, fast hands. We need a lot of reload speed. This is going to be very useful to throw those Everblasts even faster. 2 points into Tapestry and Do Harm. The Do Harm is only going to have 1 across the board, but Violent Tapestry is going to eventually probably reach 5 points with the way this is going to be set up. Nonetheless, from this point on, Transcended for that critical damage. We can also go in with more Alacrity, since this helps me with that reload speed even more. and from this point on we're kind of aiming for Wrath, so 2 more points needed in Violent Tapestry, and now we can go in for Wrath. So this increases gun damage when you activate an action skill for a few seconds, and you're going to be activating action skills every few seconds because you're going to be fake casting often, very often with this build, since we're using the driver. Now the last one that I'm aiming for is Awakening. Rush stacks gain increase effectiveness, and I think we can go for that. 2 points, 3 points, and now the build is pretty much ready to go. Now let's go into the actual yellow tree. Now the first one is going to be 5 points into Anima. We're going to be focusing a lot on status effect, effectiveness and damage. Then into the Tempest, even more important for that elemental damage, and also shock damage, which is quite a lot. Then Wildfire, just to spread all of that status effect to multiple enemies, and also kind of reach down the tree all the way to Deep Well to increase our magazine size to 20%. I mean by 20%. Now what this ability does is that it increases our magazine size, and if you throw in a Tediore after only 1 shot, this means you pretty much throw in the rest of the magazine, and the bigger the magazine is, the more the damage is going to be. I'm not really sure if this is going to translate to a 20% damage as well, just because of the magazine 20% size increase, but it still translates to quite a bit of damage, which is why this point over here is definitely worth it. Now pretty much from here on we're gonna go in with weapon shots deal bonus damage based on distance to target. Again, personal space, very important for a number of builds, not just this one, and since we're using this at our feet, we're gonna be close to the enemies, so this is a nice damage increase. I'm gonna invest only 2 points into maximum health for the time being, and from this point on we're gonna be going for arms deal that increases splash damage and also reduces splash damage taken upon ourselves. This is a very important skill point right here, and from this point on I have 3 points left to invest in helping hands, which is a very good ability to have, as well as mindfulness to kind of get those speeds up and running, like at a really high speed. That is going to be really useful. Now the way this build is going to work is like this. We're going to be using Phase Grasp in combination with Blight Tiger to get some of that corrosive damage on our character, and the reason you'll want that is because that corrosive kind of damages you a little bit, but because of that it also gives you the mindfulness stacks. It gives you that speed that you need in order to kind of move faster and faster, and the faster you move, the more stacks you're gonna have and the more damage you're gonna be dealing, up until you're pretty much going to destroy everything. So yeah, as you can see, it doesn't even deal that much damage to me. It deals like 1, 2, maybe 10 damage at most, and that's like nothing. And if I throw this on the ground, it pretty much heals me full back, so that's not really an issue. Now let's go over some damage numbers over here to see exactly how much this actually does. This is the Ever Blast, by the way, so the main blast is going to deal 520,000. That excludes, of course, the other projectiles, so 520k and another 520, so this is basically what I'm dealing. 588, so as you can see it's 500, over 550,000 plus 100 or 150,000 for each of the 4 projectiles that get to spawn from this actual thing. Now unfortunately it doesn't track this target dummy, but otherwise it does track enemies in real world conditions. And if I were to activate my Phase Grasp, in this case, that would be 860k, and this doesn't even include me running at very high speeds. That was 1 million damage, by the way. 1 million, 1 million, and I can basically throw as many of these as possible. And again, now I'm low on ammo. As you can see, I'm low on ammo, and I can't really throw another one without fully wasting my ammo. So what I can do is this, bam, 1 shot, full ammo, back on track, and just throw these into the enemy, and that's pretty much it. Anyway, on a final note, let's also talk about the only downside of this build, which is not being able to reliably take on enemies that are on a much elevated position compared to the character. In this case, for example, Wotan in the second phase, when he splits, you cannot really reliably take it with the Everblast if you want to aim for that flying part, his second half, or otherwise against bosses like Grave Ward, which are really, again, really far away away from the character, so those Everblasts never reach him entirely, unless like you wait for his arms to reach the platform and do it over there. Otherwise, everything else kind of melts against this build. Anyway, this has been it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next one.